Pay-per-meeting models and email campaigns, a strategic guide for 2025. Why pay-per-meeting is surging in 2025. Pay-per-meeting (PPM) models are booming in 2025 because they turn sales development spend into something finance teams can actually forecast. Instead of paying for activity, you pay for calendar outcomes, conversations with the right buyers. For founders and revenue leaders, that makes pipeline math feel a lot less mysterious. The catch is that PPM is only as strong as the outbound engine underneath it, and email performance is tighter than it used to be. Recent benchmarks put cold email opens around 27.7%, replies around 5.1%, and meeting booked rates at just 1 to 2% of total sends. If your targeting, messaging, and deliverability aren't dialed in, pay-per-meeting lead generation becomes pay-per-distraction. In this guide, we'll treat PPM the way we do at SalesHive, as a unit economic system you can control and improve, not a silver bullet campaign. That means defining qualification with precision, designing sequences that actually earn replies, and building guardrails so a provider doesn't trade your brand reputation for short-term volume. Done right, PPM can complement an in-house team or an outsourced sales team without creating chaos. What you're actually buying and what you're not. A PPM agreement is simple on the surface. You pay only when a qualified meeting is booked and held according to agreed rules. In practice, you're buying an end-to-end sales development workflow, list building services, messaging, sending infrastructure, reply handling, and often cold calling services and LinkedIn outreach services layered together. When you evaluate a B2B sales agency or SDR agency, the question isn't, can they book meetings, but can they do it sustainably and predictably? Pricing varies widely, but many vendors land in the $100 to $500 per appointment range depending on ICP difficulty, persona seniority, region, and channel mix. That range can be perfectly rational or completely unworkable, depending on your close rate and ACV. A low headline price can still be expensive if it produces low-intent meetings that never become pipeline. It helps to compare PPM to other common sales outsourcing models so you know which incentives you're signing up for. Build your PPM model backward from unit economics. Before you negotiate price per meeting, calculate your maximum profitable cost per qualified meeting from your real funnel. Use the last 6 to 12 months of data to map meeting to opportunity rate, close rate, ACV, and gross margin, then back into a cost per meeting ceiling that still hits your CAC targets. This is the fastest way to prevent a cheap PPM program from quietly becoming an expensive pipeline leak. Here's the practical logic. If you close 20% of qualified meetings at a $40,000 ACV, you can afford far more than $200 per meeting and still win. If you close 5% at $10,000, your ceiling is dramatically lower and your qualification rules need to be stricter. PPM is unforgiving because it turns "maybe we should improve targeting" into "we are paying cash for the wrong conversations." Capacity planning matters too because email benchmarks tell you how much volume is required to produce meetings. If meeting booked rates are typically 1 to 2% of sends, then booking 20 qualified meetings can require thousands of emails across multiple inboxes and domains. That's why selecting a cold email agency or outbound sales agency isn't just a vendor choice, it's a deliverability and operations decision. Define qualified meeting like a contract, not a vibe. Most PPM horror stories come from one root cause. The definition of qualified is too vague. If you don't specify ICP boundaries, required titles, buying stage, and basic intent signals, a provider will naturally optimize for volume to hit quotas. Your team then pays for meetings that feel busy but don't convert. Your agreement should be specific about firmographics, industry, size, region, persona requirements, seniority, function, decision influence, and meeting rules, show, no-show, reschedules, acceptable channels. It should also include operational guardrails, approved list sources, documented opt-out handling, and explicit rules preventing vendors from blasting from your primary domain. This is where you protect your brand and your reps' calendars at the same time. Finally, don't accept a black box. Require process transparency. You should know which domains and inboxes are sending, daily volume per inbox, how authentication is handled, SPF, DKIM, DMARC, and how performance is measured beyond meetings booked. Weekly reviews that include opens, replies, positive replies, meetings held, and early pipeline keep the program coachable instead of mysterious. Treat pay-per-meeting plus outbound email as a repeatable unit economics system, not a one-time campaign, and you'll always know what each dollar of spend produces. Make email your targeting engine, not just a booking tool. In 2025, cold email works best when you use it to learn faster than the market changes. Engagement data, opens, replies, objections, and not a fit patterns tells you whether your ICP is real and whether your positioning lands. When you treat email as a feedback system, meetings become the byproduct of better targeting rather than the only KPI that matters. Personalization is no longer optional if you want PPM outcomes without spam tactics. Across 939 B2B companies, the average sales email open rate is 21.3%, while personalized emails can reach 35% plus opens, exactly the difference between a healthy program and a deliverability spiral. The goal isn't long emails, it's short, relevant context that proves you chose the prospect on purpose. Sequencing is equally non-negotiable because most replies don't happen on the first touch. A 2025 analysis found 8.5% average cold email response rates, with 55% of replies arriving after follow-ups, which is why we typically design 4 to 7 touch cadences for PPM-style programs. If a provider claims they can just send one great email, they're either inexperienced or planning to brute force volume. Protect deliverability and brand reputation with hard guardrails. A common mistake is letting a provider send high-volume outreach from your primary domain to hit meeting quotas. That's how companies end up with crippled deliverability across the entire org, not just outbound. The fix is straightforward: dedicated outbound domains, gradual warming, strict daily caps per inbox, and shared deliverability reporting that both teams can see. Buyer behavior makes these guardrails even more important in 2025. Gartner reports 61% of B2B buyers prefer a rep-free experience, and 73% actively avoid suppliers that send irrelevant outreach. If your PPM engine relies on generic templates across broad lists, you're not just losing replies, you're training your market to dislike your brand. Operationally, insist on compliance and quality controls that force relevance. Copy approval workflows, suppression lists, clear opt-out processes, and documented list verification. This is where a sales development agency, or SDR agencies, separate themselves. The best programs treat deliverability like production infrastructure, not an afterthought. If a vendor resists these controls, that resistance is the signal. Win more meetings by orchestrating email, LinkedIn, and calling. Multi-channel isn't a buzzword. It's how you make average benchmarks irrelevant. When email warms accounts and captures intent signals, LinkedIn touches add familiarity, and B2B cold calling services capitalize on timing, meeting rates rise without needing reckless send volume. This is why many best cold calling services are now positioning as full outbound systems rather than standalone cold call services. There's also a resourcing reality. Sales reps spend only 28% of their week actually selling, with the rest going to admin and internal work. Pairing an outsourced sales team, or cold calling team, with your closers is often the cleanest way to protect selling time while still expanding top-of-funnel coverage. The key is setting clear swim lanes so your in-house reps aren't competing with external cold callers for the same accounts. Optimization should be continuous, not quarterly. A benchmark study of 10,000 B2B cold email campaigns found most sit at 1 to 3% response rates, while the top 10% reach 8 to 12%, largely driven by tighter targeting and stronger hooks. In a PPM program, that difference changes everything. It lowers the send volume required per meeting and reduces the temptation to cut corners on deliverability. How to pilot, measure, and scale a PPM program in 2025. Treat your first PPM engagement as a controlled pilot, not a permanent channel. A 60 to 90-day test window is usually the minimum to be fair, because list building, domain warm-up, and message testing take time. Start in one narrow segment with high ACV potential. Set explicit success metrics, meetings held, show rate, opportunity creation, early-stage pipeline, and define exit criteria in writing. Scale decisions should be based on downstream revenue signals, not just cost per meeting. Teams frequently make the mistake of chasing the cheapest meetings, only to learn those meetings don't convert and CAC balloons. The better approach is to track pipeline and revenue per meeting by campaign, then reallocate spend toward the segments and messages that consistently create real opportunities. At SalesHive, we sit at the intersection of PPM-friendly economics and performance-focused outreach. By combining an SDR engine with deliverability, testing, and AI-driven personalization. Since 2016, we've booked over 100,000 meetings for 1,500 plus B2B clients by running email, calling, and list building as one coordinated system rather than disconnected tactics. If you're evaluating sales outsourcing options, the practical question to ask is whether the partner can show you the whole machine: domains, volume controls, segmentation, and reporting, not just a calendar link.